Tens of thousands of football fans came to Highbury. Electrifying.
Yes, guys, welcome back to the Cannon Podcast. Arsenal 2, Olympiacos 0 in the Champions League. 2 goals, one from Saka. Late on, one from Martinelli to secure only our second... the first time we've won the first 2 Champions League games in a row in 12 years. There we go, got there in the end. I will start, George, with my headline. Unnecessarily stressful. It's my headline. Look, lots of positives this evening. Lots of performances to get into, specifically that first half performance of Martin Odegaard. Oh my goodness me, we will talk about that. Some really fantastic performances in the first half and lots of positives. That second half started to get a little ropey. My main feeling on it, not to go too far into it because this is just a headline, is I feel as though we're way the better team. We want to show you in possession. We don't want to show you out of possession. And Mikel has this phrase, which we all know, earn the right to win. And I didn't feel in the second half periods we were doing that. But we got through it, 2-0. I believe we are somewhere near the top of the Champions League table. Job done.
Yeah, it's a weird one. It's like having birthday cake ice cream where you're like, oh, that sounds amazing. Let me have 2 bites of that. And then after the 4th or 5th, you're like, no, I'm getting a little sick of it. And it kind of gave me just feelings where the first half, I was trying to say, like, is the second half more wasteful than the first half? And I'm thinking to myself, I mean, to be fair, even in the first half, Gyokeres could have had 2. Martinelli could have had 1 in terms of keeping his head up. And, I just think the whole game, the forwards were quite wasteful. But as a whole, I tweeted it out like during the game. This was one of my favorite Martin Odegaard performances that he's ever played for us in that first 45 minutes. That was an incredible performance. As a whole, it frustrates me that we don't have the mentality quite yet to like kill a team. And I was hoping that this would be one of them, like one of the Leeds performances where we're looking at like really being efficient in terms of our actions. But as a whole, I think we're just continuing the creativity vein where I felt like we were opening them up at will. It was a very easy game, and it was one of those games that it felt like as a player, if you were playing it, you had the intent to do well, but then you're going through the motions and you're still almost beating them. And I think people got lazy, to be honest with you, because it was very much playing with your food. But I never felt worried necessarily that we would go down or anything like that for large periods. I think there was moments, Podence had some pretty good moments, and David Raya had times where he had to spring to life. But I never was worried necessarily with the pace of the game. It was just real frustration that the attackers weren't finishing their dinner as a whole, because the midfield deserved a lot more than what they got, really. So from my perspective, it was just a really nice, happy first half, and then just a really frustrating second where the efficiency was just a problem all night, but it was even worse, it felt like, in the second half a little bit. And it was nice to see Bukayo drift off into the left, and there was a lot of times that I think we could see individual performances of some really cool freedom, not just Martin Odegaard in the role, which I'm sure we'll talk about because he deserves his own section, but even, Saka on the goal in terms of drifting out to the left, combining and then receiving, and that finish off across his body, which we haven't seen enough of. I mean, he was brilliant at that when he first came into the team, and we saw a lot of that finish, in terms of when he was a left back. But he's got some real potency in that position, and it was just nice to see him drift out wide and get some output again. So all in all, job done. Like, I don't want to go too hard. It was just frustrating because I think I walk in, I see Olympiacos, and I go 4-0, 5-0, please. And it was a late 2-0. Right. And we had the potential to, I think, coach to 4-5-0. We left easily 3-4 goals on the pitch.
Yes. Very long headline, but I agree. I think we did leave a lot of goals on the pitch. I think specifically Trossard this evening probably could have had 3. I think probably Saka could have had another 1. I think Gyokeres could have had 2 or 3. You kind of want to absolutely destroy these teams. And we were obviously comfortably the better side, but there were just a few too many shaky moments. But it happens. It's the Champions League. And we'll get into sort of maybe the why in the second half as well. Let's talk about that first half. I think the main feeling for me was, it was really good. The main feeling for me was the expansion. I think this is something I always feel, whether it's around this time of year, sort of September, October, November, when we're playing the Champions League, playing at home, playing against, no disrespect to Olympiacos, they're top of their league, but, lower-ish quality opposition, the spaces open up and we start to see really, really expansive football. And I really enjoy those games. And, I remember that Lens game when we were back in the Champions League, or the PSV game when we hit them for whatever it was, 6 or something. And it's those sorts of games. I think I wanted more, obviously, end product, but the actual joy of the experience, I think, was there in that first half. And yeah, let's get on to Martin Odegaard, because he was probably at the heart of it. I think we've chatted many times. I mean, that assist for Saka just then was from the left as well. And I think we've got a super chat about that, so we'll come to that. Maybe not go on that too much for now, but really just want to highlight the freedom that he has. And I think the spaces in these Champions League games, as I mentioned, give license for a Martin Odegaard to feel, I think, less rigid, to feel a little bit less responsibility for the team, a little bit less responsibility to, get in possession, stay on my side, do all the out of possession stuff, and actually just have a bit more fun and show himself and express himself and use the spaces that are opened up to him. When he is in full flow, the awareness he shows of the pitch, the balls that he was playing into Gyokeres, Brighton away, 22-23 to quote Roham. Those sorts of things that we see from Odegaard when he's at that level, I really think he is a special and unique player. I wish there were more situations where he was like that, but when the spaces open out and you give him time on the ball, and he's in that form and fresh, he looks like a world-class player.
I really think we need to have a discussion, though, about when we see these types of performances, because I want to lead with this, where for me it was legitimately one of the best performances I've seen in him in an Arsenal shirt, period. There's like 2 or 3 others. There's the West Ham. He loves West Ham. There's a couple of West Ham performances that are really, really top. But for me, I really want to make the distinction about him playing passes into the receivers versus being the receiver and receiving the pass from deep. There is a consistency to which the best Martin Odegaard is consistently somebody that is feeding into the receivers. And it's about trying to understand, I think, a player's instincts. Today, he was vertical. He was early with his passing. He was direct with his passing. It wasn't just expansive. It was somebody that, almost felt like he had no time on the ball, but knew exactly what he was doing with it. It was incredibly complete, and very rare did I see him recycle the ball unnecessarily to turn back and keep possession and retain. This is a guy that I think is a retention magnet that sometimes leans into that a little bit too far, but not today, not in that first 45 minutes. And look, a lot of the things, I'm not going to lie, I've been yelling for this left-hand side cameo and what that provides with your natural foot. The speed to which you can pass because the angles are naturally open to you on that side. And all those things that we know and we've talked about on this podcast for a while were there in the first 45. But really, it is a little bit more about, for me, his intent. Because he has a tendency, when he does have bad games, to hold on to it too much. And I think that, if we can translate this, not just the freedom, but more of the kind of, not just the drifting, but it's like the early passing, the vertical passing, the idea that you're going to spring your forwards early and just play the ball into the channels, chance it, is something that I think he can do a lot more of. And that was really the benefit, I think, of his play today.
Yeah, I think for me the kind of the left thing, it's not about him starting as the left 8 on paper. It's about him having this freedom. That's why I mentioned the spaces that are available in these Champions League games. And if I was going to predict a Martin Odegaard game to thrive, and it would be this sort of game. And I think in the Premier League, I just think finding those spaces, we see the link stuff that he does sort of higher up the pitch and deeper in the pitch and picking up the ball off the centre backs and that sort of stuff. And we see that level of the kind of deep lying playmaker. But when he arrives closer to the box, the spaces are shrinking. In this game, because he had a little bit more room to grow, we also saw that final action and him playing that pass, as you say, into the receiver. I just think he had the space and the time in this game to show it. And how you recreate that in different games is the question. Whether you need more stretches and runners in behind, or whether you need more, different profiles alongside him. But I just think the more freedom I see him given, I felt as though he really just felt as though I'm in a midfield 3. I think he not only played, there's a stat from Squawk in the first half. He not only played, the most passes and created most chances or something. He also won the ball back the most. It's not about him being the the role of the playmaker or the centre midfielder or the DM.
Mm-hmm.
He kind of plays it all. So for me, it's how you get that in the Champions League. But yeah, I just thought he had a terrific night and looked fit and long may it continue. Second half, we'll get onto that now. Just a reminder that we'll do all this analysis here and we'll come to all your super chats a little bit later. Thank you guys so much for them. It just got a little bit stretched, and I felt as though we weren't as committed to our out of possession stuff as we weren't as our in possession stuff. I felt as though we were kind of trying to kill the game and go, no, I know I can kill the game, without actually earning the right to kill the game and controlling it and creating waves of attacks. And I thought Olympiacos had a few good moments. Maybe you should mention in that first half. I thought Podence did well up against Ben White. I think probably our rustiest player this evening. But yeah, it just became. I would be surprised if Mikel doesn't say something after the game along the lines of, our commitment dropped, our level dropped, our behaviors dropped. He was doing a lot of this thing that he loves doing, getting, close and tight and stuff. And I just felt there was a few players, maybe Saliba, Zubimendi perhaps is unfair because he was very busy. But
I thought Gabriel didn't have his best game, to be honest with you.
There was just a few who I felt as though on the beach is harsh, but concentration levels were about 60-70%, and you just can't do that. You just can't do that, especially when you're only 1-0 up. So, yeah, second half was a little bit disappointing.
It was just more like, look, anybody that's played knows that sometimes when you go to training, you let training take you to a place that you don't really care about, especially when you feel like there's no pressure. And it got to the point where I really felt that the team was up for it. We were playing some really beautiful stuff in the first half, but I think it was almost too good. And it was like, we're too good for this team. I don't need to operate at this level to beat the team. And it became complacent in that sense, where it was more like we shifted from fourth to second and said, well, I'm happy not to expend energy. And I think, oops. Oh. 1 second.
He's in the dark. I'll carry on. Just quickly, sorry to boost my ego, but we will talk about Saka on the left in a second. Sorry, carry on.
But it was just, it felt like
just carefully your mic, mate.
Yeah, it felt a lot more it was just mental. I don't think that it was anything that we changed in terms of our tactics or anything like that. It was kind of, we got lulled into a sense of security by virtue of just creating so much, actually. And it was frustrating. And I think
that's basically what I felt it was. Sorry to cut you, but that's basically what I felt it was. It was a sense that we know we're so much better than you that actually we don't need to show the other side of the game, and you do.
No. Yeah, but the one thing that was consistent is I thought the forwards didn't pick their heads up enough, period. That was a consistency amongst everybody. I've said this in the last couple instant reactions that I felt like the midfield and the forward line are closer together. And I probably have something for the tactics corner to probably talked about there. But there is this almost diamond thing that I'm seeing where the narrow forwards are a lot closer together. Our attacking midfielder almost forms the base of this diamond, and our strikers kind of the tip. And they're all functioning in this very tight, narrow formation. And it's brilliant in terms of central access because it means people and options between the lines, and it means that people are able to combine together with a lot more potency. And I think in the first half what you saw was Gyokeres and Martinelli, especially Martinelli, drifting into more central positions, and they were kind of functioning as a front two, really. And it was great in terms of stretching teams, in terms of creating chances, but both of those players each had moments in which they didn't pick their heads up. I think it translated into Trossard when he got his chances, didn't pick his head up as well. And I think that's kind of, for me, I think the big critique is that you look at that as a little bit selfish, right? Like when your head's not up and you're not able to see your teammates across the pitch. I think they were so concerned with kind of beating through them and through the team that I think once you got to the final third, it was like, well, I want to get in on the action. And it felt a little bit like our forwards were competing for the spotlight in terms of finishing their chances. Whereas I felt that the midfield was really purring. It was actually really quite nice, not just in the first half, but even in the second half. I thought Declan Rice with a beautiful line breaker out to to Martin Odegaard in the pocket, and our midfield was just so efficient at finding space behind the Olympiacos line that it was like they were expecting probably more of a fight in that regard. And it just led to people, I think, being complacent, which they weren't, and, attacking dangerous situations because they were like, well, the midfield's going to feed me all night. I am well fed today. I don't need to be serious to be focused. And that, I don't know, it's annoying in a sense. But at the same token, it's Olympiacos. It's 2-0, so I don't want to go too hard.
Yeah.
I don't feel like we lacked creation, and it was just one of those where you're probably talking a first world problem. Why wasn't it 4?
Yeah, no, exactly, and I think it's the sort of game where you can safely, and I hope not that he's ripping into them, but I hope Mikel is saying in the dressing room, look, we're way better than them. We know we're way better than them. That wasn't good enough in that second half. And let's be clear, on another day when we lose 2-0, you need a bit of love, you need a bit of support, you need a bit of, I'm going to show you how, what happened there and how we sort of break through that. But on a day where you win, I think you can afford to go, actually, guys, there's a few of you out there who were not showing the same behaviours. I just think even Zubimendi, to some degree, I've really praised him since he's come in, but he gave a few too many balls away in the second half. And it was through playing too quickly, I think, at times, and trying to sort of show, as I say. Let's get to the numbers. From our boy Scott Willis, 2 goals to 0, 2.2 expected goals to 0.9 for Olympiacos, 16 shots to 10, 4 on target, 3 for Olympiacos. I think that tells you a little bit of a story of the game. 15 open play shots to 9, 60% possession. Not loads sort of right home about there in terms of the shots. There's the running XG, which I think sort of relatively shows the game. I don't love that they nearly created a whole XG, as they call it. Shot map just there, 2.2 to 0.9. Not loads of shots, and I think they're mostly reduced to headers. David Raya had a fantastic save, by the way, in that first half. Goodness me. And there is the absolutely gorgeous field tilt. And you can see, I think that sort of vaguely follows the game. I would have expected a few more moments of Olympiacos here. But look, as we say, it was a evening where we could have been a lot better. I don't think we massively got out of second gear, other than maybe a few moments in the final third where we looked really, really menacing. But we got through it, and I think this is the thing: is we have a squad now, and we have a group of players now who can be 60%. Giving balls away, not finishing their chances, and still, because who we can bring off the bench, because of the quality in the squad, we can still edge teams like this 2-0 even on one of our worst days. This is a game that I think 2 years ago we slip up in. As you said earlier, I don't want to go too hard on the team because it's a win. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and it's clean sheet, 2-0, no injuries. Another day in the office in which you are continuing the winning feeling. Another day in which chance creation was phenomenal, especially through the center of the pitch. Again, first world problems, isn't it? Why is it not 4-0 and it's only 2-0? And I think that there was, a couple signs, namely for me, Odegaard being in this kind of form is a massive plus. A massive plus. And look, I'm just going to say it. I don't know if we see as much of a direct performance if we hadn't seen off the back of Eze's type of performances in terms of some of the stuff he's been able to try. And I don't think Martin Odegaard has had enough pressure on his position for the time that he's been at Arsenal, period. And, I think Eze's performances in general and his impact, his ability to really be the protagonist is something that people are going to compare, and I think he's very well aware of that. So I think it's brilliant that we see that. I think also Gyokeres, by the way, I think really frustrating with his finishing, but was showing fairly good link-up again today. That's now 2 in a row in which I felt like Gyokeres was showing improvements in his link-up play and his security under contact. Again, I think this is a team that he really should make his bread and butter, to be honest with you. So there's that, but I mean, it is consistent at this point. So it was really good from him in that regard. And then I thought Miles had actually a very quietly very good game. And and kind of, I don't know if it reminded people, like I know how good he is, but it was just so secure, so basic, so locked down, and everything was just 8 out of 10. If anything, I was hoping for him to have a little bit more freedom to carry through the middle of the pitch. And I just think
he should have had an assist after
Yeah.
2 minutes.
Yeah, and I think the only reason that I didn't see that as much is because of the role that we have Trossard in terms of him dropping a little bit deeper, and just that role means that Miles's carries through the middle of the pitch are a little bit more stifled because Trossard's now carrying and doing those things. So for me, that was probably the only frustration. As you say, Ben White looked a little rusty to me, especially fitness-wise. But as a whole, mate, like I don't know what else to say beyond job done, clean sheet, 2-0. I wanted it to be 4, but it wasn't because we lacked creation, generating high number of shots.
Yeah.
And those are all things that are sustainable. And so when I don't score, that can be an output thing on the day. I can't expect my team to be 4-0 every day, amazing all the time, and at 1-90. But I think I get worried when I don't create chances or when I don't shoot enough and when I don't do enough of those things. But that wasn't the case here. So, yeah, I think I'm going to go back to my headline and make it actually succinct and say first world problem. Wanted more, didn't get more. But in the end, happy days.
Super chat from Shu, who says Saka and captain combined on the left. Who can't think about it? Quite a lot of feedback in the comments about the left-hand side thing. Clivey Baby says, guys, have you noticed Saka playing more left wing? There's someone else who I think says something about Saka on the left-hand side. I think, as we said about Odegaard, and we'll come to that in a second from Josh about him specifically, but let's talk Saka. Trying for my ego not to go to all the people who laughed at me about a year ago. But it's not about that. It's about the fact that Bukayo Saka is a world-class football player. He's a world-class football player, and world-class football players can affect things across basically any position. For me, Saka, I think, almost could play any single position. They would just have different qualities, and it depends what you want. I've always said from the left, I think there's more of a carry on the inside, and obviously on his strong foot. Obviously, he's got the shot across his body. I think he could develop a bit of a, almost like in the same way he off his left on the right hand side, a bit of a trademark Ollie Watkins-esque shot across his body on the left into sort of the far corner, the far post. Absolutely, I think physically he could be a bit more of a reference for us, more inside in there. I think there's loads of things. It's not, I'm in no way saying that Saka should come off the right or whatever. It's just that he's going to show you different qualities because of his angles on different sides. And I don't think we should be afraid of moving things around when in a game it felt as though on that on the right hand side he was not quite affecting the game. Him and Eze swapped. I think immediately Eze plays a pass there's a little combination with Rice. He gets going. Saka's looking dangerous, coming to the edge of the box and arriving late. It just looks different. And sometimes in games you've got to do that. And I haven't felt us doing enough of that. I think we're sort of doing it 22-23, maybe periods in 23-24, we kind of lost it a little bit. I would love to feel a little bit more rotation, a little bit more freedom within the front three. We've now got a bit more freedom in the midfield three, but the front three I'd love to see a little bit more. And yeah, I think we're seeing that with Saka.
Don't you think that we've been seeing that the last couple of games, like quite a bit? Like I
know. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah, like and it's just it's kind of, look, there is a difference between starting in a position and having freedom to move across positions and giving the flexibility to do so. And there's a difference between, having a role, asking a completely different set of questions versus asking clarifications, so to speak. And like people moving across the line and asking clarifications is something that I don't think Arsenal have done well enough last year. And that was the rigidity critiques that a lot of people have had. But this idea that Saka can float out to the left, Martin Odegaard can float out to the left, these are guys all on their strong foot, and they ask different questions, and you ask different angles when you're able to drive into spaces into your more natural foot, naturally. And it's more of a sense to me that I actually think that Saka's ironically more of a finisher on the left, and he's a lot more secure in his finishing on the left than he is on the right. And I think on the right, he's a little bit more provider. And it's unfortunate because I think on the right, when he is cutting in on the inside, he's asked to do a lot. Like the creativity that he actually generates is very touchline on the right most of the time. We need to do better about getting him inside. We all know that. But in terms of like his performances on the left, he's a lot more direct and a lot more potent as a finisher. Like if Saka breaks free on the right, I am not as confident. If he was breaking free on the left, I think that's more 8 out of 10 times a goal. Whereas on the right, it's actually maybe a 6 or a 6.5 out of 10. And sometimes it's just the way that certain players see certain actions. You know what I mean? And it's why a lot of times I wanted Odegaard to cheat to the left, because I feel he's more vertical on the left. He's not afforded the time. And I think strong-footed players, when they play on their same side, aren't afforded the time for their actions as they are on the opposite side of the pitch. So I'll just break that down really simply. If you're right-footed and you're attacking on the right-hand side of the pitch, your angles are naturally more closed off. And so you have to be more vertical, because when you open up to the right, you're opening up to the touchline. If you're on the left, similarly, you're doing the exact same thing, but your back is to the middle of the pitch. So you're naturally forced to be a lot more vertical when you play a strong-footed player on their same side. And I think that we could do a lot better. We've got the squad now to ask those questions, but we typically looked at opposite foots on the same side. If you were on the right, you had to be a lefty. If you were on the left, you had to be a righty. That was how Mikel had balance in the forward areas. And I just don't think necessarily that needs to be a hardline rule, especially when you're looking at trying to ask different questions of your opposition and trying to get them to pull in different areas. You know, it can become predictable if you know that consistently one person's there. Like I look at our use of Tomiyasu against Salah is the perfect example of that. We know that we can get a strong-footed defender that's on that side who then has Salah cutting into him as opposed to away from him. That's the logic we used in a different context. But so I think our freedom across the line is something to be praised for. And I think Saka's ability to finish off the left is definitely something that we should look at in terms of being able to ask for variety. But in the same way that I'm asking for Martin Odegaard to show a little bit more in terms of feeding the pass as opposed to being the receiver in the pass, and just having some flexibility to the way we use people is going to be, I think, the biggest thing that we'll praise this season if we're not predicting the same role for every single person constantly.
Yeah, I remember this press conference that Mikel did. I can't remember. I wish I could find the quote because I remember him saying it, but I can't remember exactly when it was. It was something about how much time he spends looking at the behavior of the defenses, and this is obviously something as fans we just don't. Like I'm not sat there studying tapes of how Olympiacos defend, but they are. So they might notice actually when the ball goes to the right hand side, the right hand side, the left full back isn't tucking in. Okay, well, how can I exploit that? Or maybe they're when the ball goes to the midfield, they have a tendency to jump up. Okay, well, I want to play someone who's a bit more risk averse and risky in behind. So that's a lot of the thinking. And I think the group of wingers we have now with Trossard, right-footed, Martinelli, right-footed, Saka, left-footed, Madueke, left-footed, Eze, right-footed. We've got combinations. He's willing to play, I think, almost everyone on both sides. And it's just going to depend on the game. Come back to my phrase. Josh Miller, can you explain why Odegaard looks so much more dangerous drifting on the left-hand side as if I'm a golden retriever? I think it is as simple as it suits his angles. It literally suits his angles. It's more like the thing I would say, there was a pass in the last game for Gyokeres in like the 91st minute or something. He's on the right and it's like he plays a trivela with his left foot. And he's right to do it because it's a good pass, but I don't think he can play that pass with his right foot, and that tells you. And I think just on the left hand side, it's literally just more open. It's a more natural angle. He can bend the ball a little bit easier. That's it really. But I think for me with Odegaard, again, as I said earlier, it's not necessarily about him starting on the left. It's about him having that freedom to come that side. In the moments where Saka, for example, has received that ball, he's running into the box, you're watching Odegaard drift over, he receives the ball back, that ball goes through. That's really why I think he could be massively effective.
Yeah, like I kind of touched on it a little bit earlier because I kind of saw Josh's super chat. So for me, I don't know if it's necessarily better. It's just more vertical, certainly. And when you have a strong-footed player that's on that side whose back is to the center of the pitch, it means that they're forced to play into that area and into their strong foot. So those things are going to be naturally more advantageous to somebody who's also incredibly one-footed. Like Martin Odegaard as well, like part of the problem also is even if he did go onto his right, he plays with his left quite a bit.
Yeah.
So when you force yourself onto your strong foot and your back is to the center of the pitch and you are so one-footed, it's not like you have the same ability as somebody else who might have a little bit more weak foot potential.
Gyokeres, very frustrating match considering the result. Where do you see us unlocking Victor to his full potential? Keep up the great work, both. Yeah, it feels like we have a Gyokeres discussion almost every instant reaction, but he's a new player in the team and people are having a look at him. I didn't think it was his best game. I thought Newcastle was probably maybe his best game in an Arsenal shirt. I thought he maybe took a little bit of a step back this evening. I thought he mainly because I think he had better conditions to work in. I didn't see it fully work for him. I think there was some encouragement with some of the build-up play, some of the flicks around the corner. There was a nice little pass for Trossard. He's always running, and I like the fact that it feels like we're trying to find him a little bit earlier, especially from Trossard on that side. I think they're building up a little bit of a connection, him and Trossard. Is a bit more of a creator on that side who can sort of find him. I think unlocking his full potential, Mikel spoke about him this week and he said his ceiling is still very, very far away. And that's at 27 and he's like very, very far away. And I think it's all of the details to his game. And, I think you can see Victor Gyokeres can put his foot through a ball, no doubt. Victor Gyokeres, shoulder to shoulder, will smash you as we saw for the goal. And those skills are all super useful. What I'm really interested in now is can he add the other stuff to his game? And there's signs that he is. I think there's some of his build up. Some of it's clunky, as we said before, but some of it is starting to take shape, starting to show a bit more of awareness. I'd love to see him occasionally when he turns, play that ball wide to go back into the box and a bit more centre forward play like that. But I think that will come. He's never ever going to be a TK. But we don't need him to be, and he has other strengths. So yeah, I think he's
my electrical bill is not paid.
You go pay your bill. But yeah, I think for me with Gyokeres, there's
apologies, guys. This room that I'm in is like it's a hospital room. So if you don't move enough, the sensors feel like you're not there. I'm so still that it feels like no one's in the room. So
keep waving. George is in the
hi.
Middle of the day in Canada.
Look, the Gyokeres thing. I just wanted to kind of expand a bit on that because I have seen improvements in his link-up play, and I do want to talk about them in terms of he is planting his body better. Okay, and the frustrating part with Gyokeres is that he is such a physical presence that I feel doesn't use his physical presence enough and is consistently enough. Like when we talk about him being a bully, he should bully everyone with that kind of physique. But it's not necessarily the case in terms of his link-up. His finishing, I don't want to critique because I know what he can be there. But part of the problem is if he's able to sit there and be a little bit more facilitative in some of the stuff outside the box, then we've got a player that is functional in more areas of the pitch. That is the biggest thing with Gyokeres. When I talk about, or rather when Mikel talks about ceiling, I really think there's a big part of that there because he is really doing well with, by the way, more people close to him. That's one thing. And if we, again, analyze the players that are next to Gyokeres quite a bit, that we've seen a little bit better link-up play from him. We're talking Eze, we're talking Saka, we're talking Trossard, we're talking Odegaard. What is common about all of those players? All of them are ball-to-feet players, very ball-dominant players that are able to do some of the things that Gyokeres can't do in the layoffs where it's just one touch, bang, one touch, layoff. If he can be consistent at those things, that really improves his utility. And then we can start to talk about the other things. Because to me, it was odd. When he was released today, I would have expected Gyokeres to get a couple goals, if I'm really being honest with you. There was one in which he's released in the channel. He delays
it's his perfect
pass.
Situation.
It's his perfect situation. I don't want to nitpick because I've seen him finish there. So I'm not going to be like, oh, you can't finish in that situation. I've seen it. But the thing with the ceiling with the Gyokeres thing that I think Mikel is really looking for is if he can tighten up his play between the boxes, we know he'll run. We know he'll do those things in the press. And we know that when he is in the channels, he'll stretch and he will, most of the time, test the keeper from those situations. So it's just about improving that utility for me.
And I know I keep saying this, but I still think he's a couple of kilos too big. I just think when I look at Ben White and his physical transformation going from centre back to right back, and he's spoken about this, he said I had to get leaner, like to suit the role and suit the job. And I think Gyokeres is too top heavy. And I promise you, it's not much. I really don't think it's much. It's just, a couple of kilos or, a little bit of conditioning or whatever. And once he has that, I think occasionally he's late to the ball, or it feels a bit more clunky than it actually is, because his upper body is kind of coming with him. And it's that difficult balance, though, isn't it? Because you don't want to lose that strength that he has, and that brilliant strength, which, by the way, earns us the goal this evening. So it's about not losing that strength. But also, I think to add to his game, as you're saying, I think there might just be a little bit of pull and give in that way. One thing I'd say to him, I'd love to know what he would look like after a year of yoga or Pilates. I think some of the sort of plyometric stuff, like, he just looks a little bit stiff. And I wonder if he started doing that when he was 16, I think he'd be a very, very different player. And I wonder if it would help him now. Mike Watts thought MLS and Saliba had good games. Saka off the left. Yeah. Miles, I agree. Saka, off the we've spoken about. Saliba, yeah, it's frustrating because this isn't the game necessarily to judge him in, but I think this is one of the games. I spoke about him when he signed his new deal. There are games where I feel as though he's just coasting. And I did feel at points this evening he was coasting a little bit. And I think sometimes I want to feel that desire and urge in the same way I do feel it from Gabriel. Because I have seen it in certain games when we're chasing games, he's at that Gabriel level of intensity. And I just feel like Gabriel's always there and he's just sort of floating occasionally. I'd love to see him almost win games from centre-back is the challenge, which obviously is crazy, but that's what I think he can do. That's how good I think he is. I think he can literally set the tempo and set the tone for a whole game. And I just think occasionally in games like these are the sorts of games where he probably thinks, what are we doing tonight? Oh, Olympiacos. Oh, yeah.
You know what's funny? He saves his games where he quote unquote wins it from center back against Chelsea or against a Bayern, and then it's exactly. And you're looking at yourself and you're like, oh, come on, man! Like, I just want, you know what it is? The team wanted a 5-0, and they wanted our best players to run riot a little bit, because I think once you go off the back of what was a really difficult win against Newcastle, like a well-deserved but difficult, we won it late. And I actually think the manner in which we won it late, like I really do wonder, even with 2-0, and I call it a first world problem, do you think it all changes if that was done in the first half? As opposed to like waiting till we literally did it in extra time and there was a couple nervy moments and just the emotionality of the game, I wonder, it mirrored Newcastle, but it wasn't as difficult as Newcastle, but just the timing of the goals and like how much the game was in the balance and it wasn't secure until literally the last 2 minutes of the game is something that I think is a frustration, but it's a first world frustration. It's like, oh God, my adapter didn't fit into the the plug. I forgot that. And it's like, I can't use my phone now. And it's one of those things, right? But I do agree with you in terms of Saliba taking the next step, where if we're going to consider him one of the best players to have played that position, you need to kind of identify what that type of game is for Saliba. And the only thing I'll say is I do think he saves those for the best opponents, which is why he's so good. But yeah, I think we do want, against a Fulham, have a lights out moment kind of thing.
Yeah. Petering says, give me an analogy. You got one. This is the analogy guy. I know Petering's name as well. Peach, if I'm allowed to say your name. First and second, I can say.
Is Petering the one that does collect all of them?
He does the analogy. He does the analogies. Yeah.
I want you to tell me his name because I want him to know how much I appreciate it. I think it's
the guy emailed me about something else, and he was like, "Oh, by the way, I'm the analogy guy." I was like, "No, fucking way." Andre says, "I'd love for Martinelli / Madueke and Saka to rotate. I think that will definitely be the plan. I think Martinelli." His stock probably hasn't been higher for 6 months, I would say, at the club. And that's probably because he's been able to come out of the team a little bit and have a little bit of a rest and have a bit of a rethink and a bit of a reshuffle and take that pressure off. So, yeah, I think that three, plus Eze as well, who's obviously going to play out there, I think is going to be really, really interesting.
And Havertz, we keep forgetting. And
Havertz and Jesus.
We haven't had an ability to actually rotate as much as we could. Okay, you know what? Here, I'm going to say this point. The reason that I think we're seeing the midfield and the defense so bright generally is the attack has, to be fair, I think they've been wasteful, so don't clip that, but they haven't had the same ability to rotate as much as, the midfield and the defense has. So I assume when we have one more attacker, like between Havertz, between Nani, between Jesus, there's one more that we really do need so that we can plug and play at will.
Yeah. I agree. Gunnar says, let's not forget Saka started off as a left back before right wing. So you're saying you want him to play left back. Also, I saw someone saying, "Oh no, Alex, we were going at you about the left back thing." No, I remember. I do not forget these things. It was left wing. You pricks. Clivey baby, Saka, Gyokeres, Madueke. Yeah, I think there's so many possible combinations. I think, as you say, yeah, looking at that, there was like a little shot of all the injured players afterwards, and it's a lot of our front three. We've got who are we really rotating with between now? It's Gyokeres, Saka, Eze, Martinelli, and Trossard. Basically, it's a 5, and we've got 3 to add to that. So that's and I think also coming back to the Gyokeres thing, I think he could do a bit more of the conditioning stuff and a bit more of the kind of the body work during the season if he knows, okay, you're not playing that game, so you can go a little bit harder in the gym next couple of days. John Kalagi, any concern with 0 minutes for Ethan?
I am cognizant of, as podcasters, looking into things that aren't there to find things to talk about.
Call it a problem. Shout Mikel out.
And I worry Ethan is one of those things. The team is doing so well. Central progression has been so great.
A fraud.
And now that is two games in a row in which Ethan has played. There's a major conspiracy. No, I don't worry. And actually, Ethan's played phenomenally well this season. Every time he's been able to come on. That's what I look at. What are the performances? What are the consistency? And that's kind of, I think all of those are positives for Ethan. So no, I don't worry.
And George and I did a scouted on him, which is very good in my opinion, and reminded us of our love for Ethan Waneri. Final one from James Jose says, "How do you guys feel about Odegaard and Zubimendi as a partnership? Odegaard looked great today, but in my opinion, there's an overlap clash in profiles that hurt Zubi." Sorry, I will start with the classic. Alex, want to only answer, then get more specific. There's a lot of football. And it's going to depend on the game. But specifically to talk about those two, I really feel Zubimendi as a someone in the 3 can basically play with anyone, because I think we almost think of Zubi, well, I certainly when he came in, I was aware and I'd seen the numbers on the out of possession stuff, but the out of possession stuff is really it is a different level to what I thought we were getting, and I would be comfortable in certain games with Zubimendi as a lone 6, and a Zubimendi, Odegaard, Marino midfield as we saw this evening. I think it's a really, really balanced midfield. I think it's got enough physicality. I think it's got enough legs. I think it's got enough tempo. I think it's got enough creativity. But then you say swap out Rice and Marino, or maybe you pull out Odegaard for Waneri. You can do a lot of things. So I like that as a partnership. I think specifically having a lot of the ball, and the sort of thing that Rohan actually talks a lot about in terms of like the vacating and filling the midfield. They can both do that because they can both play in so many different areas, and I trust them to counter press. I trust them to do all the out of possession stuff. So I almost think of them as just 8s or midfielders or whatever you want, 6-8s, whatever you want to call them, and then you just play with them. The only person I say I think in our midfield you'd need to supplement is Marino, but that's a different conversation, to be honest.
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, that partnership is very much between Odegaard and Zubimendi. It's kind of like, are they 8s? Are you talking about as a pivot? Are you talking about them kind of doing a little bit of the same role ultimately in midfield? Like these people that like to dictate receiving outside the block and feeding people into the passers, right? I think Zubimendi is a little bit more flexible than Odegaard as far as being somebody to affect kind of stuff a little bit more deep, like midfield. I think Odegaard likes coming into midfield deep and then dictating, whereas Zubimendi really can be the first receiver off the goalkeeper and spread play up like that. I don't worry about these problems for me. Sorry not to be a non-issue. I think for me, we just have such flexibility of profiles. I'm looking to see if we can add and create new partnerships as opposed to being worried about 2 of the same. So yeah.
Good place to end it. We'll finish there. Arsenal 2, Olympiacos 0. That leaves us in the Champions League table looking just about like this. Let me just pull up my screen. Could I pull this up before? Yes, I could. Looking like this with Bayern top, Real behind PSG, Inter Milan, and Arsenal in 5th on goal difference with 4. Shame. Feels like one of those games where, first world problem. But if we'd scored a few more, we might be top. But we are joint top, and we have a perfect record in the Champions League. Have we? American conceded? I think we are one of 2 teams in the entire Champions League who have not conceded a goal, which is a good record. I think City. Oh, they drew this evening. I thought they were losing. It's not easy, man. You look through, there's some big teams who've already dropped points. Barcelona with a loss this evening against PSG, Juventus 2 draws, by Leverkusen in the relegation battle. There's a lot of competition, but we are doing very, very well. Thank you all for watching. We will have a scouted episode out for you. James and Rohan are going to do a rewatch of the Olympiacos game. They couldn't get together to a Newcastle game, so enjoy the Olympiacos one. We put a main pod out yesterday. There'll be a TCB live on Thursday. Loads of content to come your way. And of course, the most important part is, George, Liverpool are in crisis. Isn't that nice? Isn't that nice? Thank you for watching. Thank you, George.
Thank you, good sir.
And thanks for keeping it Arsenal.
Tens of thousands of football fans came to Highbury. This was one kind of queue the ladies thoroughly enjoyed.
Electrifying. Electrifying. Inspiration.